The Mafia boss forced the black Maid to serve him. Her defiance destroyed his world. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's get back to the main character. Maya Johnson had been working as a maid for the Moretti family for 2 years. She was used to the disdainful stares, the whispers that followed her every move, but none of it bothered her. She did her job quietly, always keeping her head down, knowing that being invisible was the safest way to get by in a world that saw her as nothing more than a servant. But Vincent Moretti, the Mafia boss, had never been one to let things go unnoticed. Maya was in the kitchen one morning, cleaning up after breakfast, when he walked in. His presence filled the room, and his cold, calculating eyes locked onto her. "You've been slacking, Maya," he said, his voice low and menacing. Maya didn't flinch. She kept her eyes on the counter, wiping the surface with precise, deliberate motions. She had learned long ago that arguing with Vincent Moretti was a losing battle. But today was different. Today, something inside her snapped. She wasn't going to take it anymore. "I'm not slacking," Maya said, her voice steady, despite the rapid beating of her heart. Vincent's eyes narrowed, and he took a step closer, towering over her. "Who do you think you're talking to?" he growled, his tone laced with venom. Maya lifted her head, meeting his gaze without fear. "You may be the boss here, but that doesn't mean you can treat me like dirt," she said, her voice calm but firm. The room went silent. For a moment, Vincent didn't say anything. His jaw clenched, and he took a step back, as if he had just been slapped. He had expected fear, submission, but instead, he found defiance. Maya stood her ground, feeling a rush of adrenaline surge through her. She wasn't backing down this time. Vincent's face turned red with anger. He was used to controlling everything and everyone around him. But this girl, this maid, was different. "Get out of my sight," he snarled, his voice filled with rage. But Maya didn't move. She wasn't afraid of him anymore. "No," she said simply. Vincent blinked, taken aback by her response. He had never been defied like this before, especially not by someone like her. He had expected her to cower, to apologize, but instead, she stood there, unyielding. "You think this is funny?" Vincent asked, his voice rising. Maya didn't flinch. She just shook her head. "No, I think it's sad. That you have to rely on bullying to feel powerful," she said, her words cutting through the tension in the room like a knife. Vincent was silent for a moment, the weight of her words sinking in. He had never expected her to speak to him like this. He had never expected her to stand up for herself. In that moment, something changed in Vincent. He wasn't sure if it was his pride or something else, but he knew he couldn't let this go. He turned and walked out of the kitchen, but not before shooting Maya one last glance. As he left the room, Maya exhaled slowly, her body still tense from the encounter. She had done it. She had stood up to him, and she knew that, no matter what happened next, she had taken control of her own fate. Maya stood there for a moment, her heart still pounding in her chest. She had done it. She had defied Vincent Moretti, the notorious Mafia boss, and for the first time in years, she felt a sense of power over her own life. It wasn't just the words she had spoken. It was the feeling of standing up for herself, of not backing down when the world expected her to cower. She could hear the sound of footsteps echoing in the hallway outside the kitchen, and her breath caught in her throat. She knew Vincent wouldn't let this go. But Maya wasn't afraid anymore. She wasn't the same girl who had come into the Moretti mansion 2 years ago, meek and invisible. She had changed, and she could feel that change deep inside her, like a quiet strength that had always been there, waiting for the right moment to rise. As she turned to finish her task in the kitchen, her mind raced with thoughts of what might come next. She knew Vincent would retaliate. He had to. That was the way he worked. He didn't let anyone get away with crossing him. But Maya wasn't sure how far he would go. Would he fire her? Throw her out? Or was there something darker brewing beneath the surface? The tension in the mansion felt different now, heavier somehow, as if the air itself was charged with the consequences of their confrontation. As Maya moved to wash the dishes, she couldn't shake the feeling that she had crossed a line, one that she couldn't uncross. She felt a sense of freedom in her chest, but there was also a knot of uncertainty. What would Vincent do? And would it be enough to change her life? Later that evening, Maya found herself in the staff quarters, sitting on the edge of her bed, trying to focus on the book in her hands, but her mind kept drifting back to the earlier confrontation. She couldn't stop replaying the moment in her mind. How she had stood her ground, how Vincent had faltered for the briefest second, how she had finally spoken her truth. It felt surreal, like a dream that she couldn't wake up from. But it was real. It had really happened. And as much as she tried to focus on the book in front of her, her thoughts kept returning to Vincent. What would he do? Would he seek revenge? Would he take her job away from her? Maya didn't know, but she wasn't going to wait around to find out. She had made her decision. She had stood up to him, and now it was time to stand up for herself. The following morning, Maya was called to the main house. She had a feeling this was it. This was where everything would change. She didn't know what Vincent had planned, but she knew it wouldn't be good. She walked into the room with her head held high, her back straight, her heart beating loudly in her chest. Vincent was sitting at the head of the table, his expression cold and calculating. He didn't look up as she entered, but Maya could feel the weight of his gaze on her. "Sit down, Maya," he said in a low voice, barely acknowledging her presence. She sat down slowly, not taking her eyes off him. For a long moment, there was silence. The tension in the room was palpable, and Maya could almost hear the unspoken thoughts swirling around them. Finally, Vincent broke the silence. "I should fire you for what you did yesterday," he said, his voice hard. Maya didn't flinch. She had expected this. "But I won't," he continued, his eyes narrowing. "Because there's something about you, something I can't quite put my finger on. You've got guts. And for that, I'm willing to offer you something more." Maya's heart skipped a beat. This wasn't the response she had expected. She had thought he would fire her, or worse, make her life miserable. But now, he was offering her something more. What did that mean? What was Vincent playing at? "You've got two choices," Vincent said, his voice steady. "You can keep your position here, or you can leave. But if you stay, you'll work directly with me. I need someone I can trust, someone who won't back down. And for what it's worth, I think you might be the one." Maya felt a surge of disbelief. She had expected punishment, not a promotion. But here it was, an unexpected twist in the story she thought she knew. Vincent Moretti, the Mafia boss, was offering her a chance to work directly for him. She didn't know if she could trust him, but she also knew that this might be her only shot at something more. She looked him in the eye and nodded slowly. "I'll stay," she said, her voice steady. Vincent leaned back in his chair, a small smile tugging at the corner of his lips. "Good choice," he said, his voice tinged with approval. "You'll start immediately. But know this, if you ever cross me again, it won't be just your job at stake." Maya nodded, feeling a mixture of excitement and fear rise within her. She had made her decision. Now, there was no turning back. Maya woke up the next morning with a strange sense of anticipation hanging in the air. The events of the previous day felt surreal, as if they were a part of a dream. Vincent Moretti, the Mafia boss, had actually offered her a chance to work directly with him. It was an unexpected turn of events that she had not seen coming. But she also knew that this could be her moment to change everything. She dressed quickly, her mind racing with thoughts of what her new position might entail. As she walked through the mansion's corridors, she tried to keep a calm demeanor, but deep down, she felt a mixture of excitement and nerves. She had never been this close to Vincent before. He was a man of power, and now, she was going to be working right alongside him. The thought was both thrilling and intimidating. When she arrived at his office, Vincent was already there, sitting behind his large desk. He didn't look up as she entered, but Maya could feel the weight of his presence in the room. There was something about him that made the air feel charged, as if every move he made had a ripple effect. "Sit," he said without looking up, his voice commanding but not unkind. Maya obeyed, taking a seat across from him. She could feel his eyes on her, even though he was still engrossed in the papers in front of him. "You know why I brought you here," Vincent began, finally looking up. His gaze was intense, his dark eyes studying her every movement. "I need someone who isn't afraid to speak up, someone who can think for themselves. You've shown me that you have the courage to do that. But I also need to know if you have the skill to back it up." Maya nodded, her heart racing. This was the moment she had been waiting for, the moment she would prove herself. She had to show Vincent that she was more than just a maid, that she had what it took to rise above her circumstances. "I'm ready," she said, her voice steady. Vincent gave her a small nod, as if he were evaluating her response. Then, he slid a thick file across the desk toward her. "This is a contract I'm looking to sign with one of my partners. It's a delicate situation, and I need someone who can look at the fine print and make sure we're not being taken advantage of. Can you do that?" Maya glanced at the file, then back at Vincent. This was no ordinary contract. It was filled with legal jargon, terms and conditions that would intimidate most people. But Maya wasn't most people. She had spent years learning about business and law, her grandfather's influence always guiding her. This was her moment to show Vincent that she was more than just a cleaner. She was capable of much more. "I can do it," Maya replied confidently. Vincent didn't smile, but there was a flicker of approval in his eyes. "Good," he said simply. "Then get to work." As Maya examined the contract, she could feel the weight of her new role settling in. This wasn't just about making sure the terms were fair. It was about proving herself to Vincent, and more importantly, to herself. She knew that this was a test, one that would either make or break her. The room was silent as she pored over the details of the contract. The more she read, the more she began to see the hidden risks. There were clauses buried deep within the document that could easily be manipulated to their disadvantage. Maya's mind raced as she thought about the potential consequences. She had to be careful. One wrong move, and everything could fall apart. Hours passed as Maya meticulously went through the document, making notes in the margins, highlighting areas that needed attention. When she was finally done, she sat back in her chair and took a deep breath. She had done it. She had found the flaws, the loopholes that no one else had seen. This was her moment. She stood up and walked over to Vincent's desk, her heart pounding in her chest. She placed the contract in front of him, pointing out the key issues she had discovered. "There are hidden clauses in here," she explained, her voice calm but firm. "If we sign this as it is, we'll be at a significant disadvantage." Vincent's eyes narrowed as he read through the contract. Maya watched him closely, waiting for his reaction. For a moment, there was silence, the tension in the room palpable. Then, slowly, Vincent looked up at her, a faint smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. "You're right," he said, his voice low but filled with admiration. "You've done well, Maya. I'm impressed." Maya's heart swelled with pride. She had done it. She had proven herself. But she also knew that this was just the beginning. Vincent wasn't a man who handed out praise lightly, and his approval meant more than she could express. "Thank you," Maya said quietly. "But I'm just getting started." Vincent nodded, his gaze never leaving her. "I know," he said, "and I think you're going to be a valuable asset to this operation. But remember, Maya, this is just the first step. There's much more to come." Maya nodded, her resolve strengthening. She had taken the first step, and now, there was no turning back. She was in this for the long haul, ready to face whatever challenges came her way. With Vincent's approval, she knew she could achieve anything. And as she left the office, her mind raced with the possibilities that lay ahead. This was her chance to prove that she was more than just a maid. She was a force to be reckoned with. The days following her successful review of the contract were a whirlwind for Maya. Vincent Moretti kept his word, and she soon found herself handling increasingly important tasks. She was no longer just a maid. She was an integral part of the operation. She worked side by side with Vincent and his most trusted advisors, sifting through deals, negotiating with clients, and analyzing contracts with an expertise that surprised even the most seasoned professionals. Each day, her confidence grew, and so did her understanding of the business world she had never imagined herself in. The mansion felt different now. Maya no longer avoided the rooms she once feared. Now, she walked the halls with purpose, her head held high. But even as her position within the Moretti family solidified, she couldn't shake the feeling that things were far from perfect. Vincent was still the same Mafia boss, cold, calculating, and ever unpredictable. Despite the trust he seemed to place in her, she knew better than to get too comfortable. The power dynamics were always shifting, and she was fully aware that one misstep could send everything crashing down. Maya sat in Vincent's office one afternoon, reviewing a new batch of documents. Her eyes skimmed over the fine print, her mind sharp, when Vincent entered, looking unusually serious. "Maya, we need to talk," he said, his voice low. Her heart skipped a beat. Was this it? Had she done something wrong? Vincent's gaze was intense as he took a seat across from her. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Maya could feel the weight of his presence, the tension in the air thick. Finally, Vincent broke the silence. "There's something I need to trust you with," he said, his voice betraying a hint of something Maya couldn't quite place. "I've been watching you, and I think you're ready for more responsibility. But there's something you need to understand about this world before you can move forward." Maya's pulse quickened. Was this an opportunity? Or was he testing her once again? "You've seen the power dynamics around here. You know how things work, but you don't know the full picture yet. This business, this life, has rules that aren't written down. You play by them, or you get burned," Vincent continued. Maya nodded, unsure where this conversation was leading, but she was listening. "I've made enemies, Maya. And those enemies don't care who you are. They don't care if you're just a maid who got lucky. They'll come for you. They'll come for everyone around you. And they'll show no mercy." Maya's breath caught in her throat. She had known that working for a mafia boss came with risks, but hearing Vincent say it so bluntly made the reality hit her hard. "I've built an empire, but I've also made a lot of enemies along the way. People I've betrayed, people who want revenge," Vincent said, his voice heavy. "And they know about you now. They know you've been involved in things you shouldn't have been." Maya felt her stomach drop. What was he saying? "You're not just working for me now," Vincent said, his eyes locking with hers. "You're a target, and I'm going to make sure you stay safe." Maya swallowed hard. This was the moment she had been waiting for, but the truth of it, the danger of it, was sinking in. She had thought she was simply rising through the ranks of the Moretti family, gaining Vincent's trust. But now, she realized that every step she took brought her deeper into a world that was far more dangerous than she had ever imagined. "What do you need from me?" Maya asked, her voice steady despite the fear creeping up her spine. Vincent leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. "I need you to be smart. Stay ahead of the game, Maya. Don't let anyone get the upper hand. And if you have to make hard choices, if you have to betray someone to stay alive, then you do it. No hesitation." Maya felt the weight of his words. Betrayal, deception, and survival. This was the world she had entered, and there was no turning back now. As Vincent left the room, Maya was left with her thoughts. She had always believed in the idea of rising above, in the notion that hard work and determination could lead to success. But now, in this world of power, violence, and betrayal, she realized that there were no easy answers. She was in the middle of a storm, and she had no choice but to navigate it with caution and strength. Over the next few weeks, Maya immersed herself in the business. She studied the inner workings of the Moretti Empire, learning everything she could. But she also stayed vigilant, knowing that Vincent's warning was not one to take lightly. The more she learned, the more she understood the gravity of the situation she was in. It wasn't just about working for Vincent anymore. It was about surviving. As she sat alone in her room one night, reflecting on everything that had happened, she felt a mix of fear and determination. She was in deep, and there was no way out. But one thing was certain. She was no longer the maid who had been at the mercy of others. She had power now, power that she had earned. And she was going to use it to survive this world, no matter the cost. Maya's days at the Moretti mansion had become a whirlwind of responsibility and pressure. After her conversation with Vincent, she had realized that her life would never be the same. She wasn't just a maid anymore. She was now deeply entrenched in the Mafia's world, and with that came both power and peril. Her role had shifted. No longer was she merely cleaning rooms or preparing meals. She had a hand in the business side of things, helping Vincent with deals and reviewing sensitive contracts. With each passing day, she grew more confident in her role, but also more aware of the dangers that lurked around every corner. It had been a month since she'd taken on the new position, and Vincent had not made her life easy. He kept testing her, throwing challenges her way, making sure she was truly cut out for this world. And every time she passed his test, he threw another one, pushing her further into the deep end. It wasn't long before Maya realized she had no choice but to adapt. She couldn't show weakness. She couldn't afford to let herself be vulnerable. But the longer she stayed, the more she started to feel the weight of her decisions. Vincent's world wasn't just about power. It was about loyalty, trust, and betrayal. And though she had earned Vincent's trust, she knew that it could be ripped away in an instant if she made the wrong move. One afternoon, Vincent called her into his office. She had been expecting this. After all, there was always something more to do. Maya, he began, looking up from the papers in front of him. I have a job for you. Maya stood in front of his desk, her posture straight and alert. She had learned to pay attention to every word he said. There was always more beneath the surface. I need you to go to a meeting with a client tomorrow, Vincent continued. They've been asking for your expertise. I trust you to handle it. Maya's heart skipped a beat. This was the kind of opportunity she had been waiting for. It wasn't just another task. It was a chance to prove herself even more. Of course, she replied, her voice steady. Vincent nodded. I'm giving you this because I trust you, Maya. But remember, this isn't just about business. There are always risks. You'll need to be careful, stay sharp. Trust no one. Maya nodded, absorbing his words. She had learned by now that trust was a luxury in this world. Everyone had their own agenda, and she was no exception. The next day, Maya found herself sitting in a dimly lit conference room, facing a man she had never met before. His name was Marcus, a business associate of Vincent's, though Maya suspected there was more to their relationship than business. Marcus was sharp, well-dressed, and had a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. Maya knew better than to trust appearances. The meeting started with pleasantries, but Maya was focused. She kept her attention on the papers in front of her, noting the smallest details. Marcus spoke of potential business deals, but Maya could tell there was something more beneath the surface. The way he spoke, the way he looked at her, it was clear he was testing her. Vincent speaks highly of you, Marcus said after a while, leaning back in his chair. He told me you've got a sharp mind. Let's see if he's right. Maya met his gaze without flinching. I'll do my best, she replied, her tone calm and controlled. She wasn't sure where this conversation was going, but she knew better than to be caught off guard. Marcus pushed a few papers toward her, and Maya could feel the pressure building in the room. It was more than just business. This was a test, and she had to pass it. As she scanned the documents, she realized that they weren't what they seemed. Hidden in the fine print were details that could be used to manipulate the situation. She looked up at Marcus, her eyes narrowing slightly. He was watching her closely, waiting for her response. Maya took a deep breath, her mind working quickly. She could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on her. She had two choices. She could play it safe, ignore the discrepancies, and walk away, or she could take a risk, point out the issues, and risk making an enemy of Marcus. But she knew one thing for sure. This was her chance to prove that she wasn't just a pawn in Vincent's world. She was a player. These clauses, Maya began, her voice steady, they're not clear. There's ambiguity here that could be exploited. If you proceed without addressing these points, you could be putting yourself in a vulnerable position. Marcus's smile faltered for just a second, but it was enough. He had underestimated her, and now, she had his attention. You're right, Marcus said, his tone shifting. But what makes you think you're qualified to speak up like this? Maya didn't back down. Because I've been learning the business, Marcus. I know what to look for, and I know what happens when people get careless. There was a brief silence as Marcus considered her words. Finally, he nodded. You've got a sharp mind, he said, his tone more approving now. I'm impressed. The rest of the meeting went smoothly, with Maya handling the details and Marcus nodding along. But as she left the room, her heart was still racing. She had done it. She had stood her ground, pointed out the flaws, and earned Marcus's respect. But she also knew that this was just the beginning. She had earned a small victory today, but in Vincent's world, there was always another test waiting around the corner. As Maya walked back to the office, she couldn't help but think of Vincent's warning, trust no one. She had learned that lesson well. Maya had learned to navigate the world of Vincent Moretti with careful precision. Every step she took was calculated, every word she spoke weighed. She knew that in this world, one wrong move could spell disaster. But so far, she had made it work. The risks had paid off. Vincent had kept his word, and Maya's position within his operation had solidified. She had become a trusted confidant, someone who knew more than most about the inner workings of the business. However, the weight of her new role was not lost on her. Every day brought a new challenge, and every challenge meant the possibility of failure. Vincent was always watching, always assessing her, looking for any sign of weakness. And while Maya had managed to earn his respect, she knew it could all change in an instant. One morning, Maya was summoned to Vincent's office again. It had been a few days since their last meeting, and she could tell something was different this time. The air in the mansion was heavier, and there was a subtle tension in the hallways. As she walked toward his office, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was walking into a storm. When she entered, Vincent was sitting at his desk, his eyes fixed on a set of documents in front of him. He didn't look up at first, and for a moment, the room felt oddly silent. Then, without glancing up, he spoke. "I have a job for you," he said, his voice steady but cold. Maya's heart skipped a beat. What was it now? Was this another test? Or was it something more? She tried to keep her composure. "I'm listening," she said, standing tall in front of his desk. Vincent finally looked up, his eyes locking with hers. For a moment, he didn't say anything. Instead, he motioned to the papers in front of him. "This is an important deal, Maya," he began, his tone serious. "A deal that could change everything. But there's one problem." Maya listened carefully, her mind racing. What was he talking about? What kind of deal? "The deal is on the verge of falling apart," Vincent continued. "There's a flaw in the contract, something that could make the whole thing unravel. I need you to fix it." Maya nodded, her focus sharp. "I'll take care of it," she replied, already mentally scanning the possible issues. "I trust you," Vincent said, his voice low. "But this isn't just about business, Maya. This is about loyalty. If you can't fix this, we lose everything." The weight of his words settled in the air between them. Maya understood what he was saying. This wasn't just another contract to review. This was a test of her loyalty, her value to Vincent, and everything she had worked for. She couldn't afford to fail. As she walked out of the office, the pressure of the situation hit her. She had never felt such a heavy burden before. The fate of the deal, and possibly her position, rested on her ability to solve this problem. Maya immediately dove into the contract, carefully reviewing every line. She had to find the flaw. It was a complicated web of clauses and terms, each one more intricate than the last. But she knew that if she could spot the mistake, she could fix it. Hours passed as Maya worked through the contract, her eyes straining with each line. She could feel the weight of the task pressing down on her. This was the biggest challenge she had faced yet. As the day stretched into evening, she finally found it, the flaw. Hidden within the terms was a clause that could easily be manipulated to favor the other party, leaving Vincent and his operation exposed. It was subtle, buried deep within the language, but it was there. Maya felt a sense of relief wash over her. She had found the problem, but now, she had to figure out how to fix it. She couldn't just point out the issue. She needed to come up with a solution that would salvage the deal and protect Vincent's interests. Her mind raced as she worked through the options, weighing the risks and consequences of each. Finally, she had a plan. She would rewrite the clause, changing the terms to ensure that both parties were held accountable and that Vincent's position was secure. It was risky, but it was the only way. The next day, Maya walked back into Vincent's office, the revised contract in her hands. She had done what she had set out to do. She had fixed the deal. When she placed the contract on his desk, Vincent didn't speak right away. He just picked it up, scanning the changes she had made. Maya stood in silence, waiting for his judgment. Finally, he looked up, his expression unreadable. "You did it," he said, his voice low. Maya felt a rush of relief. She had passed the test. She had proven herself. "This deal is back on track," Vincent continued, his tone shifting to one of approval. "And you've earned my trust, Maya. That's not something I give easily." Maya's heart swelled with pride. She had done it. She had secured her place in Vincent's world, and more importantly, she had proven that she was more than just a maid. She was a force to be reckoned with. But as she left his office, she couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. There would be more challenges, more tests, and more risks. But Maya was ready. She had crossed a line, and there was no turning back now. Maya walked into Vincent's office the next morning with a new sense of confidence. The pressure from the last deal had lifted, but the tension in the air felt thicker than ever. It had been a week since she'd fixed the contract, and in that time, things at the Moretti mansion had taken a subtle shift. Vincent had kept his word, and things had been going smoothly, but Maya knew better than to get too comfortable. The Mafia world was never as stable as it seemed. As she approached the desk, Vincent looked up from his papers and gave her a small nod. "Maya," he said, his voice cool but respectful. "Come in, sit down." Maya did as instructed, her posture straight, eyes focused. There was no time for hesitation now. Vincent had trusted her with more responsibility, but she knew that earning his trust was just the beginning. It was the price of being in this world that the trust could vanish as easily as it came. I've been thinking, Vincent continued, leaning back in his chair and looking at her intently. You've handled the business side of things well. Better than I expected, honestly. But there's more to this life than contracts and deals. I need someone who can see the bigger picture, someone who can take charge when things go south. And that's where you come in. Maya felt a slight tightening in her chest. What was he asking? What did he mean by take charge? She stayed silent, letting him continue. You've been doing well in the office, but I need you to be ready for what's next, Vincent said, his tone more serious now. There are situations, things that can't be solved with paperwork. You need to understand the stakes. Maya's mind raced. She wasn't sure if she was ready for whatever next meant. She had already dealt with more than she ever imagined in this world, but she had never been directly involved in anything dangerous. I trust you, Maya, Vincent said, as if reading her mind. But the loyalty of the people around me is something that can't be bought. It has to be earned, just like everything else. Maya nodded slowly, processing his words. She could feel the weight of his expectations bearing down on her. I'm ready, she replied, her voice steady. Vincent gave her a small smile. Good. Because there's a job for you. I need you to go meet someone. He's a business associate, but he's not the type we normally deal with. He's complicated. Maya felt her stomach tighten. This was it. She was about to be thrown into something bigger, something outside her comfort zone. She could sense it in Vincent's words, the way he carefully chose them. I'm sending you alone, Vincent continued. And I'll need you to handle it. Don't bring this back to me unless you have something useful. Maya could tell by his tone that this wasn't just a simple errand. This was another test. She knew Vincent wanted to see how far she could go, how much responsibility she could take. Who is he? Maya asked, trying to keep her voice calm. Vincent hesitated for a moment before answering. His name is Thomas. He's involved in things that I don't fully understand, but his influence is powerful. I need you to find out where he stands, what he knows. If he's a threat to us, I need you to handle it. Do whatever it takes. The words "do whatever it takes" echoed in Maya's mind. This wasn't just about negotiation. It wasn't about contracts or business deals. This was about survival, about navigating a world where loyalty could easily turn into betrayal. Understood, Maya said, keeping her voice steady. Vincent gave her a long look, as if measuring her readiness. Then he nodded. I knew I could count on you, he said. Maya didn't feel like she had earned his trust yet. She had proven herself in small ways, but this was different. This was her chance to show Vincent that she was capable of handling whatever came next. As she left Vincent's office, Maya felt the weight of the task ahead of her. She didn't know what handling it meant, but she knew it wasn't going to be easy. The world she had entered wasn't kind, and the people in it didn't hesitate to take what they wanted. As she prepared to meet Thomas, Maya ran through everything she knew about him. She had to be careful. She had to stay sharp. This meeting wasn't just about gaining information. It was about proving herself. She couldn't afford to show any weakness. She didn't know what Thomas would be like, but she knew Vincent was trusting her with something important. She had to get it right. The car ride to the meeting felt long, and the silence in the vehicle pressed against her like a heavy weight. She glanced out the window, watching the city streets pass by, but her mind was focused. She was ready. At least, she told herself she was. The meeting took place in a small, private venue, quiet, intimate. Thomas was already there when she arrived, sitting at a table in the back of the room. He looked exactly like what Vincent had described, well-dressed, confident, and with an air of mystery that Maya immediately recognized as something dangerous. As she walked over to the table, Thomas looked up, his gaze sharp and calculating. You must be Maya, he said, his voice smooth. Maya didn't sit immediately. Instead, she stood in front of the table, meeting his gaze. I'm here to talk, she said, keeping her voice steady, though she could feel the tension building inside her. Thomas smiled slightly, his eyes never leaving hers. Well then, let's talk, he said. And just like that, Maya was in it. She had entered the world of shadows and power, and there was no going back now. Maya sat across from Thomas, feeling the weight of the conversation hanging in the air. The small private venue had an intimate atmosphere, but beneath that, Maya could sense the danger lurking, the subtle tension that filled every inch of the room. Thomas had a calm demeanor, but his eyes were sharp. Calculating, always assessing. She knew Vincent had placed her here to gain information, but there was more to this meeting than she could understand. She needed to stay alert. Thomas leaned back in his chair, his fingers tapping lightly on the table, a slight smile playing on his lips. "So, you're Vincent's trusted one," he said, his voice smooth, almost too smooth. "I've heard a lot about you." Maya didn't respond immediately. She had learned long ago that silence could be just as powerful as words. She studied him for a moment, watching the way he carried himself, the way his confidence seemed to fill the room. He was used to control, used to being the one in charge. But Maya had come here with a purpose, and she wasn't about to be intimidated. "Vincent trusts me," she replied, her voice steady. "But that's not why I'm here." Thomas raised an eyebrow, his smile widening ever so slightly. "I see. Then why don't you tell me why you're here, Maya?" He leaned forward slightly, his gaze intense. Maya kept her expression neutral, but inside, she was running through everything she knew about him. What did he want? What was his game? "I'm here to make sure we both understand the stakes," Maya said, her tone calm but firm. "I know you've been involved in some shady business, and I need to know where you stand." Thomas chuckled softly, clearly amused by her directness. "Shady business? Is that what Vincent told you?" he asked, his voice laced with mockery. "You really think I'm some villain in this story?" Maya didn't flinch. She had been told enough about Thomas to know that he wasn't someone who could be trusted. "I think you're someone who plays the game," she replied. "And I need to know if you're playing with Vincent or against him." Thomas studied her for a long moment, the smile fading from his face. There was a shift in the room, a quiet intensity that settled between them. Maya could feel it, the weight of his gaze, the pressure building. Finally, he spoke again, his voice softer, almost contemplative. "You're smart, Maya," he said. "I'll give you that. But you don't understand the game you're playing. No one does." Maya leaned in slightly, her eyes never leaving his. "I'm learning," she said, her voice low but steady. "And I'm willing to learn from you. But I need to know that you're on our side." Thomas didn't answer right away. Instead, he sat back in his chair, his fingers still tapping on the table. Maya watched him carefully, noting every subtle shift in his demeanor. He was hiding something. She could feel it. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Thomas spoke again, his voice cold and measured. "Vincent thinks he has control," he said. "But he doesn't. No one does. The game is bigger than any of us." Maya's heart raced. She had been expecting something like this, but hearing it out loud made the reality hit her harder than she anticipated. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. Thomas's gaze never wavered. "I mean that the stakes aren't just about money or power. There are forces at play that none of us can control," he said, his tone almost conspiratorial. Maya's mind raced. What was he talking about? What forces? "You think this is about Vincent and his empire," Thomas continued. "But it's not. It's about something much bigger. Vincent is just a player, like the rest of us." Maya felt the weight of his words, and for the first time since she had entered the room, doubt crept into her mind. What had she gotten herself into? She had trusted Vincent, believed that by working for him, she would be safe. But now, Thomas was suggesting that things were far more complicated than she had imagined. "You need to choose, Maya," Thomas said, his voice dropping to a whisper. "Because once you're in, there's no turning back. The game doesn't play by anyone's rules." Maya's mind raced as she processed his words. She was in deeper than she had thought. But she couldn't back down now. She had come this far, and she wasn't going to let fear dictate her next move. "I'm in," she said, her voice steady, her resolve hardening. "And I'm not afraid." Thomas smiled, but it wasn't a smile of approval. It was a smile of recognition, as if he knew exactly what kind of person she was. "Good," he said, his voice calm. "Then we'll see where the game takes us." The meeting ended soon after, with Maya leaving the venue feeling like a storm was brewing. Thomas had revealed just enough to make her realize that she had only scratched the surface of the world she had entered. There were forces at play that were far beyond her comprehension, and yet, she was caught in the middle of it all. As she left the venue and stepped into the cool night air, she knew that her journey had just begun. The stakes were higher than ever, and there was no turning back now. Maya couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Since her meeting with Thomas, the air in the Moretti mansion had grown even heavier. The once familiar walls now seemed to close in on her, each day bringing more uncertainty. The calm that had settled over her after securing Vincent's trust felt temporary, like a brief pause before a storm. Vincent had continued to place his trust in her, giving her more responsibility, but each time he did, it felt like a test. Every task she completed, every decision she made, was scrutinized. Vincent was watching her, and she knew it. But there was something more, something she couldn't put her finger on. It was as if the pieces of a puzzle were scattered around her, just out of reach, waiting for her to connect them. Her thoughts were constantly occupied by the cryptic words Thomas had said, the mysterious forces at play that were beyond her understanding. She had made her choice, but now she was beginning to wonder if she had chosen the right side. One evening, as Maya sat in her small office in the mansion, reviewing paperwork, she was interrupted by the sound of footsteps in the hallway. She looked up and saw Vincent standing in the doorway, his eyes dark, his expression unreadable. "Maya," he said, his voice quiet but firm. "I need you to come with me." Maya stood up, her heart skipping a beat. There was something in his tone that made her uneasy. She followed him through the halls, her mind racing. What now? What did he need her for? Vincent led her to a room at the back of the mansion, a space she had only been in a few times before. It was dimly lit, the walls lined with bookshelves and various objects, all carefully arranged. In the center of the room was a large wooden table, and on it were several documents spread out in front of a man Maya had never seen before. Vincent gestured toward the man. "This is Liam," he said, his voice cold. "He's been working on a few things that require your attention." Maya nodded, unsure of what Vincent meant. Liam was an older man, with graying hair and sharp features. He didn't look up when she entered, his attention focused entirely on the papers in front of him. Vincent motioned for Maya to sit. "Liam needs you to review these contracts," Vincent explained. "There are several key points that need to be addressed before we proceed with the deal." Maya looked at the papers on the table, her mind instantly focusing. This was familiar territory, contract review, terms, legal language. But the atmosphere in the room felt different, more tense. She couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to this task than simply reviewing documents. "I'll take care of it," Maya said, keeping her voice steady. Liam finally looked up at her, his eyes sharp and calculating. "You're Vincent's trusted one," he said, his voice low, almost challenging. "But can you handle what's at stake here?" Maya met his gaze, not backing down. "I can handle it," she replied firmly. Liam studied her for a moment, then nodded. "We'll see," he muttered, returning his attention to the papers. Maya took a deep breath and began to read through the contracts. As she scanned the documents, she noticed several discrepancies, terms that didn't add up, conditions that left room for exploitation. It was clear that this deal, whatever it was, wasn't as straightforward as it seemed. But what caught her attention more than the legal language was the sense of urgency in the room. Liam wasn't just looking for her to point out mistakes. He was testing her, pushing her to uncover something deeper. Maya's eyes narrowed as she continued to work, her mind working quickly to connect the dots. The more she read, the more she realized that the deal wasn't just about money or power. There was something more, something far more dangerous at play. She could feel it in the air, in the way Vincent had brought her here, in the way Liam watched her with a silent intensity. This wasn't just about business. It was about survival. After what felt like hours, Maya finally set the papers down and looked up at Vincent. "There are several issues with these terms," she said, her voice calm but firm. "Some of the clauses leave room for manipulation, and there's a section that could easily be exploited." Vincent didn't respond immediately, but Liam's eyes glinted with approval. "You've got a sharp eye," Liam said, his tone slightly less dismissive. "I'll give you that." Vincent, however, remained silent. Maya could sense the weight of his gaze on her, measuring her reaction. This wasn't just about the contracts. It was about trust. Had she made the right choice? Had she proven herself worthy of Vincent's trust, or was this another test, one she wasn't prepared for? After a long pause, Vincent spoke. "You've done well," he said, his voice steady. "But this is just the beginning. There's more to this deal than you realize, and the stakes are higher than you think." Maya nodded slowly, her mind racing. She had done what she needed to do, but something about Vincent's words sent a shiver down her spine. She wasn't just working for him anymore. She was part of something far bigger, something dangerous. As she left the room, her thoughts were consumed with the implications of what Vincent had said. She had made her choice, But now, she realized that she had no idea how deep the game really went. The world she had entered was filled with shadows, and no matter how much she learned, she wasn't sure she would ever fully understand it. But one thing was clear, she was in it now, and there was no turning back. Maya sat alone in her small office, the documents scattered in front of her. The weight of the past few weeks was pressing down on her, each day feeling like another step deeper into a world that had no clear boundaries. After her conversation with Vincent, and the cryptic warning about the stakes, she couldn't shake the feeling that things were unraveling faster than she could keep up with. The mansion had grown quieter, the atmosphere more tense. Vincent had given her more responsibility, but with it came an unspoken expectation, one that she was still trying to understand. The deeper she went into the business, the more she realized that everything was a delicate balance. Trust could easily turn into betrayal, and every ally could quickly become an enemy. As Maya continued to work, her thoughts kept drifting back to Thomas's words, the forces beyond their control, the game that no one truly understood. The unease she felt began to settle in her gut, gnawing at her as she tried to focus on the task in front of her. But just as she began to lose herself in the paperwork, the door to her office opened. Vincent walked in, his usual calm expression in place, but there was something different in his eyes, a glint of something she couldn't quite place. "Maya," he said, his voice smooth but with an edge. "I need you to come with me. There's something we need to discuss." Her heart skipped a beat. There was an urgency in his tone that sent a ripple of unease through her. What had she done now? She quickly stood up, smoothing her clothes, and followed him down the hallway, her mind racing. As they walked, the silence between them was thick, and Maya couldn't help but feel a sense of foreboding. This wasn't just another task. She could feel it. When they reached a private room at the back of the mansion, Vincent motioned for her to sit. He closed the door behind them, locking it before turning to face her. His eyes were intense, and for the first time, Maya saw a flicker of something she hadn't seen before, vulnerability. It was only for a moment, but it was there. "I need you to handle a situation," Vincent said, his voice low. "A situation that's become complicated." Maya sat up straighter, her mind alert. She was used to complications by now, but the way Vincent spoke made it clear this was more than just a routine task. "What kind of situation?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. Vincent paused, collecting his thoughts before speaking. "We've been in negotiations with a new partner," he said. "But there's a problem. One of my men has gone rogue. He's been working behind my back, trying to sabotage the deal." Maya's brow furrowed. "Who is he?" she asked, her mind working through the possibilities. Vincent sighed, a rare sign of frustration from him. "His name is Carlo. He's been with me for years, but lately, he started making his own moves. I've been keeping an eye on him, but now I'm certain he's been working against me." Maya nodded, processing the information. She had never heard Vincent speak about betrayal so openly. She knew the Mafia world was full of dangerous players, but this felt different. This wasn't just business, it was personal. "What do you want me to do?" she asked, already bracing for what was to come. Vincent's eyes darkened, and his tone became even more serious. "I need you to find him," he said, his voice cold. "He's become a liability, and I can't afford to let him destabilize everything we've built. You'll have to approach this delicately, Maya. We can't afford to make any noise." Maya's stomach tightened. She knew what Vincent meant. Carlo wasn't just any man. He was someone who had been close to Vincent, someone who knew too much. The stakes had just gotten higher. "I understand," Maya said, her voice steady, though she could feel her pulse quickening. Vincent's gaze softened for a moment. "I'm putting a lot of trust in you, Maya," he said, almost as if he were weighing his words. "But I know you can handle this. I've seen what you can do." Maya met his eyes, the weight of his words sinking in. She had come so far, but now, she was being asked to deal with a personal betrayal, one that could affect everything. As she left the room, her mind was racing. This wasn't just another business deal. This was about loyalty, trust, and survival. She had to find Carlo, and she had to do it before Vincent's world fell apart. Maya didn't know how to begin, but she knew that finding Carlo meant navigating a world of secrets, lies, and dangerous choices. She had already chosen her path, but now, the consequences of that choice were becoming all too real. The mansion had once felt like a home, a place of security. Now, It felt like a cage, each step she took bringing her closer to a world of uncertainty. As Maya walked through the halls, her mind raced. She had been given a task, and she had to complete it. There was no room for hesitation. The game had changed, and now, there was no turning back. Maya couldn't help but feel the weight of the task ahead as she sat in her small office, staring at the file Vincent had given her. The air in the mansion felt heavier than usual. Every shadow seemed darker, and every sound echoed more loudly than it had before. The trust Vincent had placed in her now felt like a burden. He had made it clear that this wasn't just about finding Carlo. It was about proving that she was loyal, that she was capable, and that she could handle the consequences of betrayal. Maya knew the importance of what was at stake. Vincent's empire was built on secrecy, loyalty, and trust. The slightest breach could cause everything to come crashing down. She had no choice but to play this game, and play it well. Her fingers ran over the papers in front of her, the words on the page blurring as her mind wandered. Where could Carlo be? What was he planning? And how far was he willing to go to destroy Vincent's empire? She knew that finding him wouldn't be easy. Carlo wasn't just some low-level associate. He had been a part of Vincent's inner circle for years, and Vincent had trusted him. Now, that trust had been shattered, and Maya was the one sent to clean up the mess. She had to be smart, careful. She couldn't make a single misstep. The mansion felt like it was closing in on her as she walked through its empty halls, her footsteps echoing. She had always been able to keep to herself, to stay under the radar. But now, with the weight of Vincent's expectations on her shoulders, she could feel the eyes on her, the pressure mounting. Every person she passed seemed to know something she didn't. She had to find Carlo before Vincent's enemies did, and she had to do it on her own. She was alone in this now. No one else could help her. When Maya finally stepped outside into the crisp night air, she took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the world pressing on her chest. She had to go to the places Vincent had warned her about, the underground clubs, the shady back alleys, the places where people like Carlo went to hide. She had to talk to the right people, ask the right questions. But she also had to be careful. She couldn't trust anyone completely. The world she had entered was full of deception, and even the most loyal-looking people could turn on her in an instant. As she drove through the city streets, Maya felt a sense of unease settle in. She had done everything Vincent had asked of her, but now, she was venturing into dangerous territory. The underworld was vast, and finding Carlo would be like searching for a needle in a haystack. Her car finally came to a stop in front of a rundown building tucked away in a quiet part of town. It was the kind of place that looked abandoned, but was still buzzing with activity. Maya's instincts told her this was where she needed to start. She stepped out of the car and pulled her coat tighter around her, trying to shake off the cold that seemed to seep into her bones. As she walked inside, the music from the club hit her immediately, the bass vibrating through the floor, the noise overwhelming her senses. The room was filled with people, most of them lost in their own worlds, none of them paying attention to her. Maya made her way to the back, where the more serious business seemed to be taking place. She had been here before, but tonight, everything felt different. She was no longer just a visitor. She was here with a purpose. She approached the bar, where a man with a weathered face and a scar over his left eye was serving drinks. She had seen him a few times in passing, but she didn't know his name. "I need information," Maya said, her voice low and controlled. The man raised an eyebrow but didn't respond immediately. He seemed to be sizing her up. Maya didn't flinch. She had learned how to hold her ground in situations like this. "I'm looking for Carlo," she added, keeping her voice steady. "I don't know anyone by that name," the man replied, but his eyes flickered with uncertainty. Maya could see right through him. He knew more than he was letting on. "You're lying," she said, leaning in slightly. "You know exactly who I'm talking about. And I can make your life a lot easier if you just tell me what I need to know." The man hesitated, his gaze darting around the room as if looking for someone who might overhear. Maya waited, knowing that the longer he hesitated, the more he would regret not answering her. Finally, he spoke, his voice barely a whisper. "He's been hiding out in the old warehouse by the docks," he said. "But be careful. He's not alone." Maya's heart raced. She had a lead. But there was something about the way the man spoke, the fear in his eyes, that made her pause. She couldn't shake the feeling that she was walking right into a trap. "Thanks," Maya said, her voice low and steady. She turned and left the bar, her mind already racing with the next steps. The warehouse by the docks. She had to go there, but she had to be careful. She had no idea what kind of danger awaited her, but she knew one thing. She couldn't back down. Not now. As Maya drove toward the docks, the night seemed to stretch on forever. The city's skyline glimmered in the distance, but the path ahead was dark and uncertain. Her grip on the steering wheel tightened. She wasn't just looking for Carlo anymore. She was looking for answers, for the truth that had been hidden from her all this time. And whatever it was, she was ready to face it head-on. Maya pulled up to the warehouse, the headlights of her car casting long shadows across the desolate stretch of the docks. The area was quiet, the sound of distant waves crashing against the shore the only noise breaking the silence. The warehouse loomed ahead, its structure weathered and worn, a relic of a time long past. It was the kind of place people came to hide, to disappear from the world. Maya had been here before, but never like this. This time, she wasn't just passing by. She was walking straight into danger. She could feel the weight of the night pressing in on her, the uncertainty of what she was about to face making her heart race. Her mind kept replaying the words of the man at the bar. He's not alone. What did that mean? Who was with Carlo? Maya didn't know, but she couldn't afford to hesitate. She had come this far, and she couldn't turn back now. She got out of the car, her footsteps muffled by the gravel as she walked toward the warehouse entrance. The door was slightly ajar, and as she pushed it open, a cold gust of air hit her face, carrying with it the smell of salt water and rust. The interior of the warehouse was dark, save for a few dim lights hanging from the ceiling, casting eerie shadows across the room. Maya stepped inside, her eyes adjusting to the darkness as she surveyed the space. There were crates and barrels stacked haphazardly against the walls, and the faint sound of voices echoed in the distance. She knew Carlo was here. She could feel it. But where? She took a deep breath and moved further into the warehouse, her senses on high alert. The air was thick with tension, and every creak of the floorboards beneath her feet seemed to echo in the silence. As she rounded a corner, she saw him. Carlo was standing by a stack of crates, his back to her, talking to someone else. She couldn't see their face, but the figure was tall, broad-shouldered. Maya's heart skipped a beat. This was it. She was close. She had to make her move. She stepped forward, her breath steady, her mind focused. But just as she was about to approach, she heard a noise behind her. Footsteps. Soft at first, then louder. She turned quickly, her eyes scanning the darkness. She saw nothing, but the feeling of being watched lingered. She wasn't alone. Maya's hand instinctively went to the gun Vincent had given her, hidden in the waistband of her jeans. She hadn't wanted to carry it, but Vincent had insisted. Just in case, he had said. Maya wasn't sure she was ready for this. She had been thrust into this world of danger and deception so quickly, but now, standing in the shadows of the warehouse, she realized how unprepared she really was. She wasn't a fighter. She was a negotiator, a strategist, but this world didn't care about that. This world was about survival, about knowing when to trust and when to betray. Maya stepped closer to Carlo, trying to keep her movements silent, but just as she was about to call out his name, she heard a voice from behind her. Looking for someone? Maya froze. She turned slowly to face the voice, her heart pounding in her chest. The man standing before her was tall, his face partially obscured by the shadow of his hood. He had a dangerous look in his eyes, the kind of look that made her instincts scream at her to run. But she couldn't. She had to confront this. I'm looking for Carlo, Maya said, her voice steady despite the fear she felt rising in her chest. The man smiled, a cold, humorless smile that sent a shiver down her spine. Carlo's not here, he said. But I am. Maya felt the hairs on the back of her neck stand up. She knew this wasn't a coincidence. This man, whoever he was, had been waiting for her. And he wasn't alone. Where is he? Maya asked, her voice low, trying to mask the tremor in it. The man didn't answer right away. Instead, he stepped closer, his movements slow and deliberate. You're in the wrong place, Maya, he said. You don't belong here. Maya's pulse quickened. I belong wherever I need to be, she replied, her voice steadying as she took a step back, putting space between them. Now, where is Carlo? The man laughed, a deep, mocking laugh that echoed in the warehouse. You're stubborn, I'll give you that, he said. But stubbornness won't get you far in this world. He took another step toward her, his shadow swallowing her whole. "You'll regret this," he added, his voice barely above a whisper. Maya's mind raced. She knew she had to act quickly. If she didn't get the information she needed, things would only get worse. She looked at the man's hands, noticing the glint of a weapon tucked into his jacket. She couldn't take the risk of waiting any longer. Without thinking, she reached for her gun, pulling it out and aiming it at him. The man stopped in his tracks, his eyes narrowing, but he didn't move. "You don't want to do this," he warned. Maya's grip on the gun tightened. She wasn't sure if she could pull the trigger, but she couldn't let herself show weakness. "Not now." "Where is Carlo?" she demanded again, her voice cold, her hand unwavering. The man's expression faltered, just for a moment, before he took a step back. "He's upstairs," he said, his voice quiet now, almost reluctant. "In the office. But you're not going to get to him. Not if I have anything to say about it." Maya didn't hesitate. She turned and ran, her heart pounding as she made her way toward the stairs that led to the second floor. The man's voice echoed behind her, but she didn't look back. She had to finish this. She had to find Carlo, and she had to do it before anyone else got to him first. Maya reached the top of the stairs, her breath coming in shallow gasps, her heart pounding in her chest. The sound of her footsteps echoed through the empty hallway, each step a reminder of how much was at stake. She had no idea what she was walking into, but she knew she couldn't afford to hesitate. The man's words haunted her. "He's upstairs," but she couldn't let them stop her. She had to find Carlo, no matter the risk. The hallway was dark, lit only by a few dim light fixtures along the walls. She moved quickly, scanning each door as she passed, her eyes darting from side to side, looking for any sign of movement. The closer she got to the office, the heavier the air became. It was as if the weight of everything she had learned, every risk she had taken, had come to a head in this moment. She reached the end of the hall, where the door to the office stood slightly ajar. Maya hesitated for a moment, her hand resting on the doorframe as she took a deep breath. This was it. She had no backup, no plan if things went wrong. It was all or nothing now. She pushed the door open slowly, careful not to make a sound. The office was quiet, the only noise the faint hum of a distant machine. The room was spacious, with a large wooden desk in the center and bookshelves lining the walls. But what caught her attention immediately was Carlo. He was standing by the window, his back to her, looking out at the city below. Maya's heart skipped a beat. He hadn't noticed her yet. This was her chance. "Carlo," she called, her voice steady despite the tension building in her chest. Carlo turned slowly, a smirk playing on his lips as he looked at her. "I was wondering when you'd show up," he said, his voice smooth, almost too calm. Maya didn't move. She kept her gaze fixed on him, her hand still resting on the gun in her waistband. She had to stay in control. She had to make sure he didn't get the upper hand. "Where is Vincent?" she asked, her voice sharp. Carlo chuckled softly, the sound almost mocking. "You think Vincent's the one I'm worried about?" he asked, taking a step toward her. Maya didn't flinch. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice low, every word carefully measured. Carlo paused, his expression darkening. "Vincent's not the real power here," he said, his voice dropping. "There's something bigger, something more dangerous. And you're in the middle of it now." Maya's stomach dropped. "What are you talking about?" she asked, her mind racing. Carlo's eyes glinted with something unreadable, something dangerous. "You've been playing Vincent's game, but you don't know the rules. You don't know who's really pulling the strings," he said, his tone almost conspiratorial. Maya's heart raced. This was what Thomas had been talking about, the forces beyond their control. "You're not the only one who's been trusted with information," Carlo continued. "Vincent's empire is built on lies, and when those lies start to unravel, it won't just be his empire that falls. It'll be everything." Maya took a step back, her mind reeling. She had thought she understood the stakes, but now, it seemed like the game was much bigger than she had imagined. She had thought she was doing what Vincent wanted, but now, she realized she had no idea what was really going on. "You're playing a dangerous game," Maya said, her voice steady, though inside, she was beginning to question everything. Carlo's smirk widened. "You're just figuring that out now?" he asked. "You've been part of this world long enough to know that nothing is as it seems." Maya felt a chill run down her spine. She had trusted Vincent, believed that by working for him, she would be safe. But now, with Carlo's words hanging in the air, she realized that safety was an illusion. There were deeper layers to this world, ones she hadn't even begun to understand. So what now? Maya asked, her voice cutting through the tension. Carlo didn't respond immediately. Instead, he turned away from her, walking to the desk and sitting down in the chair. You have a choice, he said, his voice low, almost pensive. You can walk away from all of this, leave Vincent and his empire behind. Or you can stay and see it through. But understand this, you're already in too deep. There's no going back. Maya stood frozen in place, her mind racing as she processed his words. What choice did she have? She had already made her decision when she stepped into Vincent's world. But now, it seemed like the game was much more complicated than she had ever imagined. She had been warned about the dangers, about the hidden forces at play, but hearing it from Carlo made it all feel too real. I don't have the luxury of walking away, Maya said, her voice steady despite the chaos swirling inside her. Carlo turned to face her, his expression unreadable. Then you'll need to be prepared, he said. Because once you're in, there's no turning back. Maya felt the weight of his words settle deep within her. She had no idea what was coming next, but she knew one thing for certain. This wasn't just about loyalty to Vincent anymore. This was about surviving in a world where no one was safe and no one could be trusted. She wasn't just playing for herself anymore. She was playing for everything.